Welcome back to episode 7 of the Stoke Vent podcast. Today's guests are Jacqueline and Sean Toomey from First Responder Sleep Recovery in the US. We discuss problems that plague the first responder community, the warning signs, what to look for, and what we can do about it. We chat sleep health in general, firefighter mortality in the form of cardiovascular disease, cancer, mental health, and sleep recovery practice such as yoga, meditation, and forming healthy habits and lifestyle choices. Please leave a rating and review, as this will really help to boost the podcast and make it more visible to a wider audience. Anyway, here we go with episode 7. Hi guys, I've got Sean and Jacqueline Toomey on with me from First Responder and Firefighter Sleep Recovery. So I'll hand over to both of you and let you introduce yourselves. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. My name is Sean Toomey. I am a career firefighter here in Denver, Colorado. I've been a firefighter with them for coming up on 16 years now, and I am also a volunteer operations captain for the small volunteer fire department where we live up in the mountains. And for all intents and purposes, I am the guinea pig and the first iteration of experience with the first responder sleep recovery. And I can speak from personal experience about what an incredible difference this has made on my life, my health, and my ability to thrive in my career while working for a very busy major metropolitan fire department.
So you were the kind of the guinea pig, you say. So you've been doing it a few years now, and then you decided to roll it out to everybody else. Then, by the sound of it.
Yeah, absolutely. When Jacqueline and I met, it was funny because I was subscribing to a model of working as a firefighter that so many of us do in our careers. I was very new in my career. I was working at the time, it was the third busiest engine company in our city, and we were running approximately 5,000 calls a year as a single resource house, and a good portion of those calls were coming in the nighttime hours. So it wasn't uncommon for us to have 5, 6, even 7 calls after midnight. And on top of that, being new in my career and super enthusiastic, I was snatching up as much overtime as I could get my hands on. I was working med unit shifts. I was working full 24-hour overtime shifts, and then I had all my day off obligations. And like so many first responders, especially when we're new in our careers, as far as I was concerned, I was doing great. I was powering through on energy drinks, on top of coffee, on top of junk food, and I was loving every second of it. And it really took somebody in Jacqueline who cared about me, who had an outside perspective to stop me one day and say like, "Hey, if you think you're doing okay, you're not doing as good as you think you are." She could see what I couldn't see when I was deep in the middle of the grind. And so she challenged me and she said, "I want you to try this sleep recovery practice and just see how it feels." So, I went into it and I joke till this day is Jacqueline is way out of my league and I wasn't going to do anything to mess up the relationship when it was early on. So I was more than happy to do anything that she suggested, but I went into it admittedly with a little bit of an eye roll. And when I came out of my first practice, I couldn't believe how good I felt. But I was still a little skeptical. I thought like, "Oh, it felt good," but maybe that's just because I like, for the first time and I don't know how long, I took a second to take a time out and just relax. But she challenged me further and she said, "All right, well, you did it once, you liked it. Keep doing this for 8 weeks and just see what happens when you go in for your annual physical." So I did the practice almost daily for about 8 weeks, and then I went in for my fire department physical, our annual, blood draw and wellness screening. And when I got the results back, I was absolutely blown away. Because at this time in my life, I hadn't changed any other negative lifestyle habits that I was engaged in. I was still working as much overtime as I could get my hands on. I was still drinking 2 to 3 energy drinks a day on top of junk food, on top of coffee. I was regularly smoking cigars at the firehouse. I had everything working against me for my health metrics. But in implementing this practice, I came out of my wellness screening, and what I saw was My blood pressure was down, my resting heart rate was down, my testosterone was up 200 points, and my VO2 max was the best it had ever been since I'd been on the job. I had literally flipped all of my health metrics on their head when I was already trending at a young age in a super problematic direction. And, I think that was the aha moment for me that was like, "Oh my goodness, this is a really small, easy to implement change that is showing a significant return on investment in my wellness." And that kind of sparked the idea of what could be first responder sleep recovery. But where that really changed was actually a couple years later. And, what happened was, as I implemented this into my life and I started to kind of anecdotally show this amazing practice that Jacqueline had introduced me to some of my brothers and sisters on the job, it was just an idea. Then in 2016, something really significant happened. And that is, I very suddenly and unexpectedly lost my first senior guy on the job to suicide. And, when we lost Mike, that hit me incredibly hard. And it hit me hard because I was a peer supporter in our organization and I was deeply invested in the health and wellness of our brothers and sisters. And when Mike died, I didn't see anything that I was taught to look out for when we talk about caring for our brothers and sisters on the job. I didn't see the significant life changes happening. We hadn't been on any one particularly bad call or series of bad calls. His behavior and his socialization wasn't changing. There were none of the red flags that I was trained on. But in trying to work through the grieving process, I think Jacqueline and I both did what so many people have been through this have experienced is we started asking the whys and the what did we miss questions. And in doing that, what we saw was that everybody who knew Mike, if there was one standout, Mike always had terrible quality sleep. But like so many first responders, he didn't look at this as a problem. He just powered through. It wouldn't be uncommon to come in on shift and, I'd ask Mike, like, "Hey, buddy, how are your days off?" And he'd tell me, Toomey, I don't get it, man. He goes, "Both days I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and couldn't back to sleep." And I was like, "Man, that's terrible." And he's like, "Nah, it's no big deal. I went out in the garage and worked on the Mustang. I got some stuff done." The firehouse was no different. It was not uncommon to get a call in the middle of the night and find that Mike had been out in the bay striping tools or cleaning equipment or watching TV in the day room. He just powered through. But in recognizing that, Jacqueline really started digging into the research and looking at what the connection was. And what we found was staggering. We actually found that people who suffer from chronically disrupted sleep were 1.4 times more likely to take their own life by suicide than those with diagnosed depression. It has a deep and intricate link. And from there, the research spiraled. All of a sudden, then we saw, oh my gosh, there's a direct and intricate link to sleep deprivation and our propensity for cardiovascular disease, for cancer, for metabolic disease, for suicide, for substance misuse. Basically, all of the leading causes of first responder mortality are directly linked to chronic sleep deprivation when it goes unmitigated. So I'll never forget it. It's one of the most significant and impactful days of my life was Mike's funeral. It was an incredibly hard and emotional day. And after we buried Mike, we came back to the house and we were sitting in our bedroom at the foot of the bed. I think really just digesting, saying goodbye to a dear friend. And, it makes me emotional, but in one of the most unbelievably selfless and courageous acts I've ever seen in my life, in a single instant, Jacqueline turned to me as we sat on the foot of the bed and she said, "I can't do that again. I can't watch you bury one of your friends, and I can do something about this." She's like, "I'm going to develop an initiative around sleep to save firefighters and to stop this from ever happening again." And literally in that moment, she walked away from everything that she had going in her personal and professional life, and she dove into the research head first, and she hasn't come up for air since. If she's not digging through the books and the research to make sure that this program is as up to date and relevant to our community as it could possibly be, then she's on the phone with firefighters who have been through our program, helping guide and support them through a long-term wellness journey of sleep health that doesn't end after we've just taught a class at a department. It's truly been an inspiration to watch the way that she has taken the first responder community under her wing and really fostered and nurtured a program that is designed around supporting first responders to see them happy and healthy well into retirement. It's it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be a torchbearer and an ambassador of this incredible program that she has developed, and it's been nothing short of awe-inspiring. As she's about to introduce herself, I'll leave you guys with this: is that it would be no understatement to say that she has truly, over the last 10 or 11 years, become an absolute guardian angel of our brothers and sisters out on the streets working to support others. And it's been an absolute privilege to be a part of that journey with her.
Great. Thanks for that, Sean. That was a great explanation and introduction to the program. We'll touch on some of the points you made, because, like you said, there's just such a huge array of health issues that are caused and made worse by sleep deprivation, and I can see the work that you guys are putting into trying to reduce the impact. So, Jacqueline, if you could just sort of come in from there and expand on that and tell me what it's been like for you, and from your own perspective, really.
Thank you, James. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to connect with you on your podcast. And we're so honored to be here with you. And thank you for your work and everyone out there who is on the front lines making a difference in the world. I feel it's my purpose to show up for each of you. So, really, this whole program is centered around what I believe to be my purpose in life, which is to just support those who serve others. And so when I saw Sean early in our career have terrible sleep, not only did I feel bad for him, I just knew that he needed to do something before he became a statistic. And that moment in seeing Sean be a pallbearer for Mike, it struck something in me that was a pivot point in our lives. And so I just had this vision of how can I empower first responders to better their sleep and in turn promote longevity, health, well-being, not only um, on the job, but well into retirement. And in doing so, it's not just for their own benefit, but having a well-rested first responder means communities are safer, crews are safer, the whole world benefits, and sleep underlies everything. So um, I just knew that there were certain practices that had helped me in my personal life. So I said, Sean, why don't you try these things? And that's kind of, like he said, he was the guinea pig. He was like, Jacqueline, there got to be other first responders out there who could benefit from this. It's helped me sleep better. Why don't you share it? And it was a seed that had been planted, but it really wasn't until Mike where I felt this deep, deep sense in my gut of it's not even an option. I feel called to do this. This is what I'm going to do. And I've been really honored to teach over 5,200 first responders since the program started. And it's spread across 19 states. And I've taught in 3 Canadian provinces for fire and police department. So
Making some waves then, definitely.
really honored.
Now we're ready to hop across the pond, James.
Yeah. Do you know what? I was going to ask if it's if it's something that has to be done in person or something that you can teach. Do you teach it online or is it strictly in person's classes?
Yeah, we typically teach in person. We believe that there's something that happens when you are present with one another, and it fosters connection and trust, and to be guided through some of these practices. It's really supportive to have a container that that is well created for supporting such practice. So it's a little bit of a looser container online. It could be done, but we've found most success in person.
Got
However,
you.
we are going to Europe this summer, just saying.
Yeah, whereabouts?
We'll be going back to Italy. So
Right, cool. So is that something is that for travel for work, or is it a holiday, or
it happens to be our 10-year anniversary.
right? Okay,
So,
lovely. Uh, oh, congratulations.
thank you.
Thank you so
But
much.
but yeah, do you know what? It's great that you've put this together, because I find there's a bit of a, and you've touched on it in a couple of your articles actually, that I've read them before. There's a particular one that I read a while ago. It's the Sleepless Heart one, and then you've got Addicted to Awake as well, haven't you? A couple of those articles that I paid close attention to. You've talked particularly about the culture around sleep, and how it's a bit of a badge of honor to be sleep deprived, isn't it? And there's that, you mention it in the article, I'll sleep when I'm dead attitude, and it's almost, I think, it's not only is it sort of a badge of honor to just carry on and push through without sleep, but I feel particularly over here it's kind of frowned upon to prioritize sleep, I find, and especially in the job here, you can almost kind of be seen as work shy if you want to prioritize sleep, or you think that you should be able to prioritize sleep at work. But like you've said, well-rested firefighters it's safer for the organization, it's safer for the community. So what kind of battles have you had with culture? Because I've talked about it before in terms of the like contaminants and the decon and stuff like that in terms of culture, and I think that's been quite a battle. And I think culture heavily relates to sleep as well. What kind of struggle have you had changing people's approach to the culture there, and is it something that's been well received, or is it a bit of both really? Is it a bit of an uphill battle, or are you finding that people are very receptive of it?
I would say it's a combination of the two. And I not joke, but I'd like to say, like, I think Jacqueline was one of the pioneers in bringing this conversation to the forefront in the fire service, at least in the States, because when this started, nobody was talking about sleep, and it was that culture of I'll sleep when I'm dead, and sleep was a dirty word. We didn't want to draw any attention to sleep, and in the States, the majority of fire departments work 24-hour shifts. So even from a labor standpoint, there was a lot of fear and apprehension around highlighting the problem with chronic sleep deprivation. Specifically, you'd hear unions say things like, well, we don't want to draw attention to the fact that we're sleeping on duty. And, one of my favorite quotes I ever heard is, when we entered into a handshake agreement with state and local and federal governments to work beyond a 40-hour work week without compensation, the agreement was that we were being paid for our availability, not for our hours worked. And that's why we could work beyond 40 hours without compensation. Um, with that, the fire service has changed immensely since the days of those agreements. And we've gone from a time when we came to the firehouse and we just responded to fires to now, we are all hazards emergency service personnel. We are doing fires, EMS, rescue, hazmat, technical rescue, and all of those things require a level of certification that we have to maintain, which lends itself to more training commitments, more training logging, more training hours. On top of that, we've taken on a substantially greater role in things like prevention. So we're doing more community engagement, community risk reduction, hydrant inspections, building inspections. The list goes on. So the ratio of work to availability has significantly shifted. And with that, the scientific community has caught up to the detriment of sleep deprivation and linking it to these significant health and wellness causes, which makes the cell a lot more, I think, applicable to firefighters as we go out and teach. And, when this started, it was great because Jacqueline was literally She would drive to a fire department, find their headquarters, go knock on the chief's door and be like, "I need to talk to you about sleep." It wasn't even, we weren't advertising, we weren't really out there. She was literally knocking on doors and saying like, "I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna teach your members about this, even if I've got to do it for free." And since those early days when we were doing that, um, our business has been our initiative has been almost 100% word of mouth. And we have been consistent and unbelievably busy since the early days. And I think that speaks to the growing recognition of and desire for addressing sleep wellness in the fire service, that people are reaching out to us independent of any kind of, you know, aggressive advertising or campaigning for it. They're finding us through word of mouth and they're coming to us. And, the biggest thing that I think we try to emphasize is we can utilize sleep, and particularly sleep quality, as a performance enhancing tool, and we have to separate that from laziness. Sleep and laziness are oftentimes viewed in the same vein, and what we really try to push is we're not promoting a lazier fire service. We're not promoting a slower fire service. What we are promoting is a performance enhancing tool that's going to enable aggressive, passionate firefighters to continue to work at busy firehouses, to continue to turn out with a high call volume, and to continue to do that with a high degree of professionalism and a mastery of their craft that we all take so much pride in. So just like we take pride in our nutrition, in our training, in the time that we spend in the gym being physically fit, this is another element that lends itself to being a master and being a professional. I've always said, if your family is trapped on a second floor bedroom in a well-involved house fire at 2 o'clock in the morning, who would you rather have show up? Would you rather have that firefighter that took 45 minutes to prioritize a little bit of sleep recovery, whose muscles and cognition are functioning at a much higher level? Or do you want that ego-driven person who's proud of the fact that they haven't slept in 48 hours, that's not making logical decisions, whose physicality is substantially diminished? In my world, if I want to be a master of my craft, I want to be that person who's showing up rested, physically prepared, and mentally prepared for the task. And I take a lot of pride in that. And Jacqueline could teach a master class on really outlining the importance of that and demonstrating that to the groups of firefighters that we have the privilege to sit down in front of and teach to.
Do you know what? I'm glad you said that, because I've said the same thing almost word for word. That I've said, who would you rather have show up realistically? It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Really. And like you said, our number one priority is emergency response, and that's what we need to be. That's what we need to be prioritizing. That's what we need to be making sure that we're fit for and we're in shape for, and that we've not been. Of course, if we're required, no one's going to hesitate, but we need to obviously try and reduce the amount of unnecessary sleep deprivation. I think that's the key word, isn't it? Unnecessary sleep deprivation. And I think there's so much of it in our job, and there's so much that we could get back. And that's obviously what your program is helping people to do. So I wanted to touch as well on, we've briefly discussed it. I'll come to you, Jacqueline, for this one. What do you see as, looking into the fire service and the work that you do and the people you work with, what do you see as the main risks and the main problems that we will face as first responders as a result of sleep deprivation?
I'll answer this with a question. James, what are the top 3 leading killers of firefighters today?
Well, it's going to be cancer, heart disease, and potentially suicide.
What if I was to tell you, James, that all 3 of those leading causes of first responder death are directly linked to chronic sleep deprivation over a career?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
So that is the reality of sleep deprivation, is that all-cause mortality is increased. Your lifespan will be shorter, and the quality of your life inevitably will be altered by sleep deprivation. If you just think about one night where you didn't sleep all night, how well did you feel that next day? Were you functional? Were you able to even have a coherent conversation? You know, we could talk about the short term, but when you look at the long term effects of sleep deprivation, it's staggering, and it should give everybody pause such that they change their life to optimize their sleep. If we're trying to decrease disease and statistics, sleep is where we start.
Yeah. So in terms of the issues, what do you think the mistakes are that we're making then as firefighters? Obviously, there's the routines that we're bound to by the shift work and by our duties, basically by our sort of basic obligations and responsibilities, and some things we can't get out of. Like Sean said, several calls after midnight. We can't get out of that, can we? That's just the way it is. What are the mistakes that we're making? So, for example, what could we be doing better off shift? What could we be doing better during the day? What could we be doing to try and give ourselves a better quality of sleep and cut down on unnecessary sleep deprivation and work towards that healthier life, really, is my question.
Yeah, I'll answer it and then I'll invite Sean to chime in as well. Let's zoom out and look at the greater culture and then zoom in to personal behaviors. So I think as we started to discuss, like there's this wearing of fatigue as a badge of honor. That's like a cultural thing. Like, oh, you push through, good on you. Look at how much you're getting done, not sleeping, working 3 extra jobs. There's that. So we have to um, really look at, and who's to blame there is, I mean, everything can come back to monetization. Like our awakeness has been commodified. So in other words, we are trained, not only in the US, but I would say in the West in general, in the world, we are, corporations have trained us all to be awake through the use of stimulants because it makes them money. It's like $70 billion industry of energy drinks. Those statistics vary on how much they actually make, but it's estimated to get there. So I would say at a global level, we have been brainwashed to believe that it is better to be awake. We are brainwashed to believe that we can be more productive by being awake longer. However, the reality is, like statistics show, that you become less productive the longer you're awake, and that it's absolutely essential that you receive quality sleep, not just sleep, but quality sleep for functionality. So that's just a large view. I think wearing fatigue as a badge of honor, that needs to shift. But in terms of like personalized behavior, and I guess there's a link there. There's, as I'm sure Sean can attest to, and you've probably experienced, I think there's an over reliance on stimulants that actually sabotages our sleep and influences our biology. So, the use of caffeine can be used strategically, and I'm not opposed to it altogether, but it can certainly be used strategically. However, over time, chronic use of things like caffeine will elevate baseline cortisol levels, and there's a precursor to cortisol production, which is your wake up hormone, that is shared, a precursor that's shared with your sex hormones. And if you are demanding your body to produce too much cortisol over time, you're going to have lower testosterone levels. So here we are using caffeine to help offset our sleep deprivation to be more awake. And then it is dysregulating our circadian rhythm, dysregulating our sex hormones, and it's also increasing our blood pressure and heart rate. So I think that could be a mistake. And then the mindset that there's nothing you can do. Like early on in our program, we were told a lot, oh, suck it up, buttercup. There's nothing you can do. We're going to be woken up every night no matter what. And so, but the thing is that there's actually a tremendous amount that you can do. And this is something I would say specific to our program is we look at um, how can you optimize the little bit of sleep that you do get in between those calls? How can you optimize your daytime routine to support better quality rest? And we could look at things like intake of caffeine and timing of that, or environmental components. But it specifically comes down to nervous system regulation, which influences hormone health, and your endocrine system's really running the show. The timing of your hormones are dictating um, when you sleep and the quality of your sleep. And so we really need to focus on how do we optimize our hormones so that you can have the best quality sleep, regardless of calls, and be able to return to sleep and feel well rested and functional the next day. So I think that's what I would identify as uh, mistakes.
Yeah,
Make
makes a lot of sense, to be honest. So I guess we're talking to get into the basics of it. We're talking about what you're putting into your body, how you're stimulating, how often your mind is being stimulated, how it's being stimulated. Like you said, I think we're at a time in history at the moment where we're constantly stimulated, aren't we? Everywhere you look, we process so much information non-stop, and we're just being constantly stimulated, and it's exhausting sometimes, isn't it? Really, and I think it's about trying to sort of step away from that. So what you're saying is, if we prioritize trying to live our life a certain way, just throughout the day, in terms of what we eat, what we put in our body, how often and how we're being stimulated, that's a way we can sort of get a grip of our nervous system and set ourselves up for, like you say, it's not just about quantity of sleep, but actual quality of sleep. So even if you get 4 or 5 hours in a night, what does that sleep actually look like? How good is that quality of sleep? Because I guess you could get 4 hours that are maybe more effective than 6 or 7 hours if that quality of sleep is bad. And like you say, if you're overloaded on caffeine, I'm guessing even if you get 6 hours, the quality of sleep is going to be pretty poor, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it'll actually suppress certain beneficial stages of sleep if you are loaded with caffeine or, other substance use. Like a lot of people use alcohol, and I'm sure Sean was just probably thinking of that in terms of what we do to try to support either our wake or sleep state, and we're sabotaging it. And it certainly comes down to the suppression or alteration of specific sleep stages when those substances are present. And how can we not rely on those things or over the counters to have control over our ability to fall asleep. Um, this, like you mentioned, this world is so overly stimulated, and not just what we consume like orally, but just visually, auditorily, like we are so stimulated. And so to be able to learn how to regulate your nervous system through specific practices, we're not taught that in school. We are taught how to upregulate our nervous system, how to get up and go, how to exercise, how to be productive, how to go fast. We are taught that. It's in our culture, it's in our schools, but we are not taught the skill of initiating relaxation in your body. So a lot of people suffer. Like, how many of you have, you know, laid in bed and just your mind is whirling with all the to-dos or rewinding stories from the past or concerns about the future, and you are not in control of your body.
Generally
You're not
every
in
morning,
control.
I would say.
Yes.
Huh,
Yeah.
exactly.
Something I like to say, like to Jacqueline's point, is um, on the broader scope of this is just understanding the fact that, like any process that we do to better ourselves, sleep is a process we can invest in. Um, it's funny, for all the things that we do for wellness, sleep is the only one that people just kind of, they go to sleep and they trust it's working well. Imagine going to the gym with no workout plan whatsoever, And just every day you kind of show up for a little bit and you like maybe grab some weights and move some weights around or walk on the treadmill, but there's no plan, there's no consistency. That's not going to give you a return on investment. If we go out to the training ground at the fire academy and we just kind of tool around with some things that are out there, but we don't have a training plan and an advancement plan, we're not going to get better. But for some reason, we all have this idea that with sleep, we can get away with that. We just get in bed and it's going to do its thing. The reality is, just like exercise, just like training, just like diet and nutrition, there is a way that we can invest in our sleep to get a maximum return on investment and get better quality sleep. But we have to be willing to invest in it like everything else. An analogy I always use is I think about like, you know, professional athletes. A professional hockey player, a professional soccer player, they can't train at the level that they train at without investing also in their recovery. When you're pushing your body that hard to train at that elite level of physicality, the body's not meant for that without taking an intentional step to invest in your recovery so that you can sustain that level of training. Firefighting is no different. Between the atypical hours and the significance of the work that we do, from our physical bodies to our mind to our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, we're calling on those systems at a professional athlete level. We're not like the general population where we just put a little bit of energy into our bodies and then we go home and go to sleep and our body can naturally recover. We're asking our bodies and minds to deliver a lot for us in support of our communities. So we also have to be willing to invest in our recovery and invest in our sleep. And we can't just let it happen passively, but we have to put some intention into how we get the maximum return on investment possible from that process.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I spoke to somebody else about this, and it was kind of a way up between health and performance, and we kind of have to sit. It's a little bit like our job, a jack of all trades, aren't we? We kind of have to sit in the middle and achieve balance, really, because we can't. I don't think we can push too hard one way or the other, and I certainly feel that that's kind of the trick is to try and achieve balance, really. I don't know about you, but I do think it's either a lot of the time when you're on shift, it's just all or nothing, and you come out the other end, I find, and your rest days can just be a complete write off. And I've spoken to people they've had terrible sleep on shift, and even off shift. Sometimes you get. It tends to be the older guys, I think, that they've been doing the job a while. They've probably been doing it a while, and as a result, they've picked up, sleep conditions. What's the word for it? You mentioned it in one of your articles. That's what I'm after. Yeah, sleep disorders. They've acquired sleep disorders without even realizing, and they sleep terrible off shift, and they say, "Oh yeah, I just don't sleep much." It was a quote actually from one of your articles that I just wanted to mention. So it's under Sleeping for Your Life, and it says almost 40% of firefighters suffer from a sleep disorder, and it said according to a screening of 6,933 firefighters, 80% of those who tested positive had no prior awareness or previous diagnosis of their condition. And that, to me, that just kind of, I was shocked by it, but not surprised, if that makes sense, because it's just very reminiscent of people I've worked with. And I mean, even myself, similar to you, Sean, I've been doing it just gone 16 years now. And if I think about the way I sleep now compared to how I used to sleep when I was younger, it's nowhere near as good. I don't sleep for as long without the sleep being broken. I can't just, unless I'm exhausted, I can't just get into bed and go to sleep. Whereas when I was younger, I used to be able to I could sleep anywhere and I would just go to sleep immediately. But now I struggle with sleep in a way that I didn't used to. And I can only put that down to the job, really, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's funny, you hit the nail on the head telling that story, right? Because you said like these older guys will just have that idea of like, yeah, I just don't sleep like I used to. And it's just kind of a thing we accept. It's just a part of the job. And something Jacqueline's done an incredible job of is there's a very simple and easy to understand physiological path that's happening that's causing that to happen. From hormone dysregulation and a whole number of other things, we can point to the starting point and the finish line that's leading to disrupted sleep. And when you understand how that's happening in your body, it becomes exceedingly easier to understand why you're doing things like these sleep practices to break that chain to heal back up. No different than, if you dislocate your shoulder, you understand what's going on in the healing process. You understand, like, I've dislocated my shoulder from the socket, I've stretched tendons and muscles, we're going to put the shoulder back. The labrum has to heal, the tendons have to heal, everything's going to get resupported, and your shoulder's going to get better. We have no problem as firefighters understanding the physiology of how we recover from something like a shoulder injury or a knee injury or a back injury. And that's what we're aiming to do with this program is create the same thing with sleep dysregulation is understand the physiology that's going on so that it doesn't just become this thing that's like, this is how it is. And the older I get, the worse it gets. It's like, no, there's an easy way to break, it requires an investment, a personal investment in yourself, but there is an easy, tangible way to break the link and regain your sleep quality. I mean, it's never too late.
So I guess this would be a good question for you, Jacqueline. I'd like to give an overview of the training package that you provide towards the end of the chat. But I guess without giving away too many of your secrets, what can we do to get a grip? Obviously, there's certain. I think you've mentioned meditation as well, haven't you? Which is something I've got into over the last few years, which I really enjoy. So I guess if for people listening to this, where can we start really? And what are the things that we can kind of do right now that are within our grasp? What are the changes that we can make? And what can we do to sort of set ourselves on the right trajectory? What are the easy wins that we can kind of go for and simple behavior changes that we can have a go at really, like right now?
Yeah, great question. So I think what you're describing, your sleep changing over time, that happens for most people just through general aging. But then you add shift work in it, and it disrupts your circadian rhythm with cortisol, your wake hormone, and melatonin, your sleep hormone. We really need to lower our cortisol levels. We really need to lower our cortisol levels so that um, our melatonin levels can rise, and that's our sleep hormone. And a lot of people will just pop some melatonin, um, the hormone, as a pill to try to get to sleep. However, um, I advise against that because we want your pineal gland in your brain to produce the melatonin naturally. And so there are things you can do. Like there are various categories, right? There's environmental, there's nutritional, and then there's these mind body practices. But one nutritional tip, and this is like a little recipe I created a long time ago that I'm happy to share with you and whoever is listening. I call it like a Jacqueline's sleep mocktail. And I think I posted a video of this recipe like back in 2018 on YouTube. I'll see if I could send it to you. But it's
Yeah, I'd love to
simply
see that. Yeah.
it's just a simple recipe. It's a cup of water, 300 milligrams of magnesium carbonate, and a teaspoon of organic concentrated tart cherry juice. And magnesium serves over 300 enzyme actions in the body. There are various types of magnesium, but carbonate is one which supports sleep. And tart cherries are a naturally occurring form of melatonin found in nature, and your body synthesizes it differently than an exogenous hormone in a pill. Which there's a lot of research that shows taking the pills, the dosage is usually way too high and it ends up causing fragmented sleep. Usually people feel groggy and not well rested. It might initiate sleep, but the quality is not there. So you want to produce it naturally. And magnesium and tart cherry juice is one simple recipe you can use to have better sleep. Now,
James, I was curious in the UK, is that an over the counter thing that you can purchase, melatonin, or is that a prescribed
Do you know
more of
what?
a prescribed medication?
I'm not actually sure, to be honest. I would imagine here the drug controls are a little bit stricter here, and there's certain things that you have to get on prescription that you can get over the counter there. So if I had to guess, I would probably say you need a prescription, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, and I was just curious because obviously, in the States, for whatever reason, as a hormone, melatonin, for whatever reason, has escaped any kind of regulation. So I could go to a convenience store, a grocery store, even some gas stations right now, and I can buy melatonin gummies, melatonin pills, melatonin supplements. It's everywhere. So, especially in the States, it's really prevalent that we see first responders attempting to self-medicate with melatonin, completely not recognizing the fact that just like testosterone or estrogen, melatonin is it's a hormone, and we started introducing exogenous hormones into our body without any kind of oversight from a medical professional. It can have some pretty serious unintended consequences, and I know we're a little unique in that, so I'm not sure. I know there are other countries where it's highly regulated, so I was curious how it was there.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like testosterone, for example. You can only get on prescription here. You can't just go and purchase it. So I would imagine it's similar to that, really. Yeah, and for the reasons you've said, so that people don't start to rely on it, and I guess all the other complications that it would cause, really. Yeah.
Yeah, the US is the exception. There are a lot of countries that do not permit melatonin to be sold over the counter, and probably for the better. As Sean said, it is a hormone. It's different than taking a vitamin or a mineral, and you don't want to be messing with your hormone balance. I'll actually share a brief story of a friend that she was actually trying to conceive with her partner, and she was not getting pregnant, and she actually read an article about how taking melatonin pills might alter your sex hormones. And so once she stopped taking melatonin, within 8 weeks she got pregnant. So quite fascinating. But it will certainly alter all the hormones in your body. Again, it's also can be beneficial in the context of, for example, there are studies around people with cancer who are fighting um, cancer and undergoing chemotherapy treatment. When medically um, advised under physician's care, melatonin can actually support the survivability of cancer. And that the primary reason for that is because researchers have recently found that melatonin is not just a circadian rhythm hormone, it's not just a sleep hormone, it actually plays a key role in your body's natural defense against cancer. So, if people are like, well, how do I get more melatonin? One thing to do is get off your cell phones and get off your screens at night, because that light produces cortisol and it suppresses your melatonin. We need lower cortisol levels for melatonin levels to rise so that your body can have a healing defense against cancer, which I believe the body has the power to defend against cancer if you support it in the right way. So that's another simple thing to practice. It's harder because, Netflix and social media make it very addictive, and our brains are actually addicted to screen time. And so we have to, put boundaries on ourselves. Like there's an app, so you download the app that helps put a limit. It's like an adult timekeeper. Like you're not allowed to use your social media after dinner.
Yeah.
We've got to put those things in. We've got to, just pull the plug on the Netflix.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to preload the next episode. And I
It's
think the final.
so easy, isn't it? Just to keep watching. It's like before you even get a chance to stop it, the next one's on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Life is just geared up to take us down, isn't it? Really. But yeah. Sorry, you were on a roll there. I stopped you there.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say the primary thing that I advocate for uh, it's a methodology that has evolved over the last decade, and it's what I am known for really teaching first responders as the sleep recovery practice, which I can describe that helps you restore your nervous system balance and have better sleep. And um, we do somatic practices using the body to reset the nervous system, breath practices to downregulate, calming breath practices, and then the third stage, which is becoming increasingly known, which I'm very excited about. It's a guided sleep practice. It's a relaxation practice, a form of meditation called yoga nidra. Nidra means sleep. So you just lay down on your back, you follow along, and you're guided into a sleep state. And it's very effective. Through the work of Richard Miller, who the U.S. The Department of Defense studied yoga nidra for military, they found it highly effective at healing not only sleep but also post-traumatic stress symptoms, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and fatigue. And so there's a tremendous amount of research out there showing the health benefits of yoga nidra. And every time I guide the practice, I've been studying it for about 20 years. Every time I guide a practice, I have first responders who are wearing health trackers, gives me their heart rate before and after. And typically there's like a drop 20 beats per minute just after a short 20 to 30-minute practice. So most people report increases of deep sleep, your delta slow wave sleep, as well as better overall sleep quality, and you get more bang for your buck because you're really inducing the chemistry of the brain to be in favor for the sleep state. So yoga nidra is just this powerful, super skill everybody should learn to have better quality sleep.
So is this something that you practice during the day, or is this something that you would do before you're about to go to sleep?
So do you mind if I take that one, Jacqueline?
Yeah, please do. You could share how maybe you integrate it in your life as a firefighter too.
Yeah, so, generally these practices, what's nice is, for Jacqueline, there's an enormous amount of work that goes into creating these practices. When she says it's a meditation, like it's a very specific type of practice that has to be very specifically curated and done in the right way to downregulate the nervous system in the most beneficial way. But for me as a person who's practicing, it's the easiest thing in the world because all you got to do is lay back, lay down. You don't even have to lay down, but I like to lay down and listen. So the way this works for me is I'll generally use this if I'm at work. The practices tend to be between 20 and 40 minutes long. So usually after lunch, if I can find some downtime in between calls, I'll go back to our dorm area and I'll try and get in a 20 to 40-minute practice. And then it's also the last thing I do before I go to bed at night. Then when I come home, if I've had a particularly bad night or busy night, one is sometimes I'll use it in between calls throughout the night to help get back to sleep and get down regulated after a call. And when I get home, I can use it as sort of a superpower nap to get a little bit of recovery on the front end of my day after a busy night and still be active throughout the day without inadvertently sleeping so long that I start creating a bigger problem, like a shift towards like work shift disorder where you're switching your circadian rhythm. What I really like about it, and this goes back to, the cultural shift of gaining acceptance of practices like this, is it's very structured. There was some research out there that kind of anecdotally showed in a 45-minute sleep recovery practice, you could get the equivalent of around 4 hours of normalized sleep in terms of physiological repair benefit. So now I have this tool at my disposal where I can have a really structured and intentional investment in my recovery without fully disrupting my day. I can finish lunch at the firehouse, tell my crew, hey guys, we're all going to go take 45. If you want to get into sleep recovery practice, get into sleep recovery practice. And then after 30 to 45 minutes, we're back out in the day room or we're back out in the bay and we're getting ready for training or whatever task that we have to do for the rest of the afternoon. Same thing when I get home, instead of leaving Jacqueline highly dysregulated, not knowing if I'm going to come home from work and be ready to enjoy the day or take a short nap or accidentally fall asleep for 5 hours. Now I can tell her like, hey babe, like we got kind of work last night. I'm a little exhausted. Give me 45 minutes. I'm going to go do a sleep recovery practice, and then I'm all yours for the day. And that's, that's really helped with our dynamic at home too, and building some consistency around this remarkably inconsistent schedule that we work as firefighters.
Yeah, well, that that sounds amazing. So do you get it? Does it come in like bite-sized chunks, or is there like you said 20 to 40 minutes, or is there like I assume like a 40 minutes is like the optimum time, is it, or does it come in like sort of different lengths?
I'll send you a recording, James.
Oh, okay, thank you. Is this something that you've created then?
So this is actually an ancient practice. However, it's been adapted and tailored for first responders. So, while it's a yoga-based meditation, but it's, as Sean said, it's very specific. Most meditation drop you into alpha brain waves, which is the first phase of sleep. So light relaxation. However, yoga nidra, the research shows, and the data that we've gathered as well through sleep tracking devices is when you practice yoga nidra effectively, you actually induce slow wave sleep in 20 to 30 minutes. Normally, it takes about an hour, up to an hour, to get into low wave sleep. And that's when your muscles are repairing. It's when your testosterone is starting to surge. It's all of these amazing things, healing of your heart. Your heart rate is really slow. So we can induce through this technique slow wave sleep much more quickly than normalized sleep, and way more quickly than if you were to just run a call in the middle of the night and then try to fall back asleep. It's even harder because now your heart rate's up here, your adrenaline is going, you're totally woken up. So it's a very effective technique. It's ancient, but it's been made modern. I've been certified in a lot of different methods of this technique, and then after working with thousands of first responders, I've adapted it to be more effective for the audience that I'm working with.
Yeah, so you've created a training package around the adaptation for first responders then, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. So is this part of because I've been looking at your training package, and there's various modules, aren't there? Does it fall into one of the modules, or is this kind of like a standalone practice then?
Yeah, so when we teach our program for a fire department, we'll go in and it's a whole workshop that integrates education and then practices. So it's very hands-on, it's very experiential, and you get to learn the techniques. I teach about a dozen different techniques over the course of a day. And so you walk away with, oh, I learned a dozen different ways to relax my body through specific practices. And so it's a very lovely way to learn how to reset your sleep and be able to have a new relationship with sleep, especially for people who have sleep disorders or frustration, insomnia, anxiety. Like it's just a wonderful way to empower yourself because, um, like I said, we don't really typically learn these techniques. We're taught you need to sleep. Your doctor says you need to focus on your sleep. Well, how do you do that if you're laying in bed staring and counting sheep? Like nobody teaches us. So that's why I feel really strongly everyone should learn these skills because everybody could benefit from it.
Yeah. You know what? I wish that I could just come along to one of the classes, to be honest. I've been looking at the different modules. So we've got sleep architecture, heart health, immune function, mental health. That's a massive one, isn't it? Growth, hormone health, and sleep hygiene. So is this over the course of a single day, is it? It is. So how does the training actually, how does it look? How does it start? Do you assume you spend a allotted amount of time on each module and then you just work through, and is it mainly practical, or is a lot of it like, like just education? Imagine it's a mix of education and practical application, is it?
Yeah. So, for example, if we are talking about heart health and we look in some of the research around the heart, through the module, I will say, okay, here is now a technique to lower your heart rate, and then we'll guide the practice. And then we'll look at, each module will be accompanied with a technique. So it's very experiential. You gain both education and experience.
Okay, great. So I'd like to ask both of you the same question. If there was one thing that you wanted firefighters to sort of take specific notice of in order to sort of really change their relationship with sleep, what sort of one piece of advice each of you would give to everybody to maybe spur people on to change the relationship with sleep?
If it were coming from me, I would say the fire service has changed exponentially, and it's remarkable what we have taken on as firefighters in service of our community. And over those years, we have seen our cancer rates increase, our suicide rates increase, our cardiovascular death has increased. And we now know, we have every bit of scientific evidence in the world to point to the fact that the quality of sleep and recovery we are getting is the number one predictor of the quality of firefighter we will be, and more importantly, of our all-cause mortality. So if you want to be a master of your craft, and you also want to get out of this career with a whole nother chapter of your life to write, where you don't die within 5 years of retirement, the most important single thing you can do is prioritize your sleep wellness. And something as simple as a 30 to 45-minute sleep recovery practice every day is enough to be the difference between dying 5 years after retirement or having another 15 to 20 years with your family and your loved ones after you've served your community and walked away from this job. And you'll have a whole nother chapter to write. So don't underestimate the value and importance of this superpower that is sleep to see us through our careers happy and healthy.
Brilliant. Cheers, Sean. Thank you. How about you, Jacqueline? Do you think there's anything that you'd like to add to that?
I will add on to that statement, which was so strong, and reframe it again in a question. And we all have to face our mortality at some point. I think, especially firefighters, but I also in our youth, like when we're in our 20s, we think, oh, we're going to live forever and we're immortal. However, as we know, we will all have a day of transition where we're not going to be in this life. So the question is, how do you want to die?
That's quite a question. That's quite a question. You know what? I think that will get people thinking, actually. Yeah, good. That's a good response. Yeah.
Yeah. We, in an ideal world, wouldn't it be lovely to just pass in our sleep and it would be ideal to have a peaceful transition. If we want to prevent disease, cancer, if we want to not go through that horrible way to go, this is the answer. Sleep will support every aspect of your well-being so that you have a wonderful, healthy, vibrant life and the best possible way of exiting this life. That's what we should be focusing on. We should invest in our sleep.
Yeah, very nicely put. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Especially firefighters, they're one audience that it's there's a lot of thick skulls that you've got to try and hammer the message through. I think, isn't it? Myself included, really. It's I think you're doing an excellent job at getting that message across. So yeah, thanks.
It's something that's amazing is, looking at you guys in the UK, at least from what little research I've done, you guys in the UK to us in the States, is you're set up and primed for something that is right on the precipice of becoming kind of a revolution in the States, and that is a 4-platoon model on 24s.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of the states, we're on 24s, but we're on a 3-shift or
So you
a
do
3-watch model.
24-48, do you?
Yeah, that one's really 24-48 is really common. 48-96 is really common, and then there's a terrible schedule that's 24 on, 24 off, repeated 4 times, and then there's a 4-day break.
Wow, that's
So the big,
heavy.
it's crazy, and it's been a huge shift that we're seeing in the States right now is departments moving towards hiring a 4th watch or a 4th shift so that we can go to something like a 24-72 or I think you mentioned it like a 1214 or a 115. But it's amazing because as many of you guys are on 12s, you already have the 4th shift. So the switch to like a 24-hour model with four watches is such a lighter lift than what we have, where we have to hire an entire
Oh yeah,
4th watch to do it.
and I mean the 4 days off. It is, you do need it because I'm not at a quiet station. We do our fair share of jobs, and it's very rare that we're not out throughout the night after midnight. And if you have a busy tour, your first 2 days can be, as you'll know, can be a complete write-off. And then I mean I'm on my 4th day off now, so I'm back in tomorrow morning, and I'm all right now. I'm well rested, and I'm ready to go back to work. But I don't think I would feel that way if I'd not had the 4 days off.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you're an officer on a pump, right?
Yeah. So I've been a crew manager which is lieutenant equivalent for you guys, for 2 years now. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it now. I really enjoyed the change. I say I'm really enjoying it now. Made it sound like I wasn't before, but no,
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the change over the last couple of years and taken on the additional responsibility. And I needed something else, to be honest. I was getting a little bit bored just
Yeah.
doing the same thing, and I needed more of a challenge, to be honest. So
You and I think are mirroring each other. James is I'm just started my 16th year, and I've been a lieutenant for 2.5 now.
right, cool, yeah,
So
yeah,
so we're on the same path.
pretty similar then, yeah, nice. What are your plans going forward then? You got any more promotion plans, or you happy doing what you're doing?
I would like to go at least one more step up, where we do. I don't know how similar this is to you guys, right? But as a lieutenant, I'm in charge of 1 crew, 1 shift. If I could promote one more to captain, I would be in charge of an entire firehouse. And foreseeing some cultural change that I've wanted to see in our industry, including with this program, right? Seeing a cultural change around leadership promoting the importance of rest and recovery and health, along with just how we treat each other and a return to camaraderie and, a passion for the job. I really love the idea of being able to take on an entire firehouse and build a really positive, really team-oriented, healthy group around like a really amazing firehouse. So I think that'll be hopefully my next step.
Yeah, do you know what? I would love to do the same. Yeah, definitely sounds similar to my ambitions. So when you say a whole firehouse, then are you in charge of all the shifts? Then you would be as a captain. Are you in charge of 3 shifts,
Yeah.
or yeah, right, cool. So you have one captain per firehouse, is it?
So it depends. For us, we have 1 captain per rig, and then it's the senior captain that's in charge of the firehouse. So like if we have a pump and a truck in one house, the junior captain is in charge of his rig across all the shifts, and then the senior captain is in charge of both rigs in the entire firehouse. He or she has final say.
Yeah, I get you. So yeah, I wanted to ask the sleep recovery. The yoga. What was it called? Do you remember what it's called?
Nidra.
Nidra. That's it.
Nidra.
Yoga Nidra. Is this something that you teach as part of your package, or is it something that people can Google and have a look at and go away and try it?
I'll give you a sample practice that you're welcome to link in the show notes. And
Okay, thank you.
our
Yeah.
methodology, like my methodology is not online. Like the 3 stages that I teach in trainings is not online. However, the yoga nidra, which is one of the stages, is, and so you could at least get a sample experience of it.
Okay,
I'll
yeah.
send you a YouTube link for you to practice, and then whoever is listening is welcome to practice and try it out. Yeah.
I'll say that too, like practice Jacqueline's practice with the link that she shared because yoga nidra is becoming increasingly popular and a little more mainstream in recent years. And that's an amazing thing because it's gaining traction. It also comes with a little bit of a complication in that some people who are very well intended are putting out recordings that they call yoga nidra, but they don't follow the proper sequencing. So you're not going to experience the same return on investment. So if you were to just Google it, you might end up with some people, like I said, well intended, but not delivering the practice in the proper way, as opposed to Jacqueline's dedicated. She could say, I couldn't even say how many hundreds of hours to certifications, recertifications, trainings, advancements.
It's in the
She is,
thousands of hours, actually.
yeah, she's a true master at developing these in the most responsible and professional and effective way. And you really want to make sure you're getting that when you're checking these practices out.
Awesome. No, I'll give it a try, and I'll definitely link it in the show notes, and I'll get back to you and let you know how I found it. I'm a big fan of meditation. Been doing it a few years. I am definitely still a beginner, but I do enjoy it, and it's something that I owe a lot to in terms of my mental health. I think it's definitely helped me sort of help keep me on the right track with my mental health at times as meditation. So I'm guessing it's in that vein of sort of practical application. So
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
I'd say something. If I could say something to that, James, like that's like remarkable, and that maybe this is something we didn't touch on, but I think it's so incredible. Mental health. You know, when I started getting trained as a peer supporter in my organization, something that drove me nuts is like mental health was always talked about as this like super mystifying thing that we can't possibly put our finger on to identify where it's coming from. And I think when we look at sleep health, it deconstructs that a little bit. It shows you the pathology of how just chronically disrupted sleep can really affect our mental health. We know that when our sleep is significantly disrupted, it does things like it takes away our feel-good hormones. Dopamine and serotonin get super deregulated, and so we're chemically losing our ability to feel joy and happiness and accomplishment. And then also, when we're not sleeping enough, we're rewiring the way that our brain processes information. We're shifting from our logic and reason center up in the front of our brain to our impulsive reactionary survival brain called the amygdala. And over time, if we're not getting enough repair during sleep, the body will continue to prioritize the amygdala more and more. And we actually see atrophy in our prefrontal cortex where it will begin to shrink. Something that's super amazing about yoga nidra is there's been research done out there that shows that people who practice it regularly, they saw as much as a 65% increase in endogenous dopamine production. So they're bringing their feel-good hormone back online. And people who did it for 8 weeks under PET scans actually saw measurable and recordable growth in their prefrontal cortex and their hippocampus, as well as like downregulation of their amygdala. So you're physically repairing those physical changes that happen that cause us to have those mental health disruptions that are exclusively a byproduct of chronically disrupted sleep before we even add in the other things that can affect our mental health, like the things we're doing on calls and life stressors. So it's just it's a remarkable tool to bring our critical thinking and our feel goods back online.
Yeah, you're right. It's amazing. Do you know what? It's amazing that the things that we do have at our fingertips that we're not even aware of, and that a lot of people will have never considered, and unfortunately probably will never consider unless they listen to things like this. So yeah, I do think, yeah, we're lucky in one sense, and it's quite tragic in another that so many people are just unaware of the tools that we've got at our disposal. So yeah, thanks for bringing attention to that, Sean. Yeah,
Absolutely.
great point.
Yeah, it's a wonderful way to support your mental health.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it's great. Before we sort of round off, I want to ask both of you if you've got any recommendations for books, movies, documentaries. What do you think?
Can I plug the book that I'm about to publish?
Please do. Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Check it out. First Responder Sleep Recovery coming out soon. with
Yeah,
fire engineering books. Keep an eye out.
yeah, I will. Definitely. Awesome. How about you, Sean?
I obviously have to say that one. Jacqueline's book coming out
Yeah,
is going to be amazing. Jacqueline's been like a one-man wrecking crew of trying to get this information into the hands of as many people as possible, and we are so excited that she has dedicated well over the last year and a half of her life into compiling over a decade of experience teaching first responders into a comprehensive kind of sleep guide textbook. And to be able to get that into the hands of more and more firefighters is just, it's going to be super special, and we can't wait for that to happen. Um, I also say if I had two books that I'd recommend for people that I've read in the last year, from a fire service perspective, I read uh, a really amazing book by David Marquette. He's a U.S. Navy captain, and the book's called Turn the Ship Around. It was one of the first leadership books I've read in a long time that really gave me a ton of tools to take away as a relatively new officer that I've implemented into my daily life and has had a really huge impact on my leadership style. And it was kind of cool to step outside of the standard fire department leadership books and gain perspective from something else that was also told in a really entertaining way that had an amazing story. And for a non-fire department book, In the Mouth of the Wolf by Rosar is probably one of the most fascinating, incredible, heroic, true stories I have ever read. It's the first time, and I don't know how long, that I picked up a book one morning, started reading it, and I didn't set it down until it was over. I read that straight through in one sitting. It was so captivating. So those two are my top two book recommendations for the year. I love both of them.
great. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. So, what's next for both of you then? What are your plans?
Well, one thing we got coming up that is super exciting and is a reiteration of our program is we are taking a group of first responders in just a couple of weeks on a first responder wellness retreat in Costa Rica.
Nice.
Jacqueline has implemented an additional layer of our program in the idea of removing barriers to taking time for ourselves to intentionally relax and recuperate and heal from the incredibly hard work that we do. And one of the things that we saw is that when it came to firefighters and police officers taking vacations, one of two things usually happen. One, it's either super stressful because you have to do all the planning and all the arranging, and that in itself is difficult. Or like so many of us have done, we end up in, Cancun or on a beach somewhere where drinking and partying is a large part of the vacation equation and rest and recovery is not there. So we were incredibly blessed this year to Jacqueline planned an absolutely amazing wellness-based first responder retreat in Costa Rica. We're going to have an enormous amount of fun and an enormous amount of adventure centered around just good quality rest and recovery and rewarding ourselves for the hard work that we do. And we were super blessed this year because we partnered with two amazing nonprofit organizations, and we were able to give out a significant amount of scholarships so that people were able to come on scholarship who are really in need of just
Free.
a meaningful time out. So super excited for that, for what's
Amazing.
coming next.
Oh, that's great. That's great to
Yeah,
hear.
shout out to Wolfpack Support Services and shout out to Urban um, Warrior Project and Tactical Construction who are helping pay for first responders to come on a 7-day trip for free. They're not paying anything, they are paying for their airfare. But yeah, so we're really honored to share that. And yeah, that's what's coming up.
Yeah, great.
And the book.
Thanks for sharing. So, where can people reach you then if they think, do you know what, I want to learn more about this, or they want to book themselves onto one of your training courses? What would the best thing for them to do be? Where would they go?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook, of course, First Responder Sleep Recovery. And if you want to have us out to your department, I would suggest getting the conversation started now. It usually takes 1 to 3 years on average for a department to initiate the conversation to the point that we actually go deliver the training. So
Right.
start the
Yeah.
conversation now.
That doesn't surprise me, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything
and
takes way too long.
you could fill out a form, firstrespondersleeprecovery.com/contact, and we'll get that form and we'll reach out to your training officers, your chiefs, and we'll be happy to support your organization.
Brilliant. Right.
Great. Thanks, James.
Awesome. Nice to meet you both face to face. And yeah, thanks again for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to putting it out.
I'm looking forward to seeing it, and it was like so awesome to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Like I said,
You too, guys.
maybe at some point we can make our way over to the UK and start spreading the good word over there too. We're ready.
Yeah. Do you know what? Do you know what? That'd be great. Let me know if you do. If you do have any plans to come over, and yeah, if there's anything I can do to help make that happen, let me know, and I'll try my best. Because do you know what it is? I do think it's something that we obviously would benefit from over here, and it's just trying to make people actually sit up and listen and whatever, and hopefully this conversation will help with that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the work you're doing, man. Just having a podcast that's shining light on not just our program, but all these things that we need to be looking at as firefighters to just stay healthy and happy is so awesome. And I think that's just the work you're doing is really amazing.
Yeah, that's the plan, isn't it? That's the goal, and it's an uphill battle, isn't it? But you know what? Thanks for saying. I appreciate it. Half the battle is trying to convince firefighters themselves. I think, really, like just like banging your head against a brick wall sometimes. I think, but yeah.
What's the old saying? The two things firefighters hate most are changing the way things are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very very frustrating sometimes, isn't it? But yeah, we'll keep trying. We'll keep pushing it. So yeah, thank you guys, and have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll speak soon.
Absolutely, you too. Have a great night.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon.
Bye bye.